Megalodon Media News, back with another thought-provoking video. Have you ever wondered how much technology and historical buildings we inherited from very ancient civilizations? Historical buildings and landmarks that are far older than we were told? Why do we call evidence theories? And why do we call myths facts? In recent years, a fascinating historical narrative has taken root in online forums and alternative archaeology circles. This is the theory of a lost global civilization called Tartaria that supposedly vanished in the early modern era after dominating the world during a previous undisclosed epoch dating back thousands of years. According to proponents, compelling yet unexplained architectural similarities across continents, along with numerous buried ruins and technological anomalies, point to the existence of this now forgotten but once highly advanced culture that served as the precursor to many known ancient civilizations. Establishment historians insist no actual evidence supports such speculations, dismissing Tartaria as an unfounded fabrication. However, gaps and inconsistencies in the conventional timeline continue to fuel speculation. The basic premise holds that an intricately interconnected civilization called Tartaria flourished during a lost era predating recorded history. Tartaria supposedly created architectural wonders and monuments attributed to later cultures like ancient Greece and Rome, and even influenced medieval European and pre Columbian American societies. Here are 10 ancient sites cited as potential evidence for the Tartaria theory, along with notable anomalies they possess. Baalbek, Lebanon. The gigantic stone blocks weighing up to an estimated 1,650 tons at the ancient Roman temple site of Baalbek represent building capabilities exceeding what mainstream archaeology attributes to Roman era technology. Pumapunku, Bolivia. The incredibly precise polygonal masonry and unusual technique used at the ancient site of Pumapunku in the Andes have led many to question whether this lost city could have been built by the suspected Tiwanaku culture. Sacsayhuaman, Peru. Cyclopean zigzag walls constructed from immense boulders fitted together at Sacsayhuaman and other fortresses near Cusco exhibit stone working accuracy that some argue predates the Incas. Baghdad Battery. The discovery of what appears to be a 2,000-year-old clay pot containing a copper cylinder and iron rod at the Parthian village of Kujut Rabu in modern Iraq has been interpreted as a possible ancient electrical cell by some scientists. Yonaguni Monument, Japan. The Yonaguni Monument consists of extensive underwater ruins near Japan that may have been carved from one giant slab, which geologists date to 8000 BC, making the site potentially older than the pyramids at Giza. Göbekli Tepe, Turkey, built around 9600 BC, the megalithic stone circles with T-shaped pillars at Göbekli Tepe in southeastern Turkey significantly predate the rise of civilization in the Near East. Los Lunas Decalogue Stone, USA. This ancient inscribed stone in New Mexico bears writing in an unknown script resembling Paleo-Hebrew, potentially making it a record of the Ten Commandments predating Columbus. Nan Madol, Micronesia. The stone ruins of Nan Madol off Pohnpei Island in the Pacific include columnar basalt log cabins weighing up to 50 tons, confounding how such structures could have been built on a remote coral reef. Crespi Collection, Ecuador. Father Carlos Crespi acquired hundreds of unexplained gold, and copper artifacts in Ecuador that some argue resemble modern objects and technology found buried in strata preceding Columbus. Sarmizegetusa Regia, Romania. The ancient capital of Dacia contains ruins of Roman style architecture and a system of subterranean tunnels that Tartaria advocates believe connected a now lost metropolis. Ancient temple complex of Tartaria. Key architectural anomalies driving the Tartarian theories. The ancient megalithic walls and sophisticated hydraulic systems at Sacsayhuaman in the Cusco region of Peru, dated by mainstream history to the 15th century Inca Empire, but claimed by some to predate the Incas based on the massive stonemasonry exceeding Inca capabilities and showing signs of mud flood burial. The elaborately carved Lalibela churches in Ethiopia, dating to the 12th century AD, but supposedly built in the European Romanesque style before the arrival of Christianity in Ethiopia, which advocates argue provides evidence of European conversion preceding accepted timelines. The ancient underground catacombs and water channels discovered beneath the 14th century old town of Edinburgh, Scotland, which seemed to precede its recorded building date, suggesting the presence of a buried Tartarian settlement. The presence of ancient Herodian masonry technique under the western wall in Jerusalem's Old City, whose style supposedly predates Herod's Judean kingdom in mainstream chronology, implying origins in an earlier advanced civilization like Tartaria. The discovery of ornate medieval structures and building facades buried beneath more modern buildings in the historic section of Naples, Italy, interpreted by some as remnants of a prior lost civilization buried and built over. Taken together, these examples of sophisticated architecture, anomalously predating or buried below conventional construction timelines from diverse global sites, comprise key pieces of evidence cited by Tartaria theorists to argue that mainstream history has compressed or fabricated centuries to obscure a forgotten highly advanced precursor civilization. Ancient Tartarian emperor with his shamanic priestess. While variants existed previously, the modern outlines of Tartaria emerged online in the 2010s through a synthesis of esoteric texts, revisionist histories, conspiracy media, and scattered architectural oddities. The term itself derives from 18th century European usage, referring to the Central Asian steppe regions, overlapping parts of Russia and Kazakhstan. Rare mentions of Great Tartaria in Victorian texts evoke mythic connotations. Tartaria's transformation into a full-fledged lost civilization begins with iconoclastic historians like Isaac Newton and Nikolai Morozov questioning gaps and duplications in conventional timelines. Anatoly Fomenko's 1970s to 80s new chronology framework provides a more rigorous model for collapsing the middle centuries into a much shorter period through statistical arguments about duplicated eras. Online discussions fuse such concepts with the 19th century mudflood catastrophe hypothesis, attributing massive soil deposits mysteriously burying buildings and entire cities to antediluvian floods. Add scattered research into out of place artifacts, architecture, and records passed through the alembic of conspiracy media, and the mythical empire of Tartaria emerges. Here are some of the key pieces of evidence cited in support of the Tartary theory. Many medieval and Renaissance structures around the world, designed with unusual heating and cooling systems that would have required advanced technological knowledge, for example, underfloor heating. Archaeologically anomalous construction materials and techniques used in ancient sites that don't correspond to the documented capabilities of the credited builders. Remains of massive, evidently purpose built subterranean complexes found across Eurasia and the Americas, some with indications they were anciently flooded. Ruins of mighty walls and architectural formations in remote, often inaccessible areas with no clear record of who constructed them. Ossuaries and anomalously large graveyards dating back millennia, yet yielding mostly non local artifacts. Outsized monolithic megaliths and precision cut polygonal masonry found at sites assigned to much later cultures. Terracotta pipes, plumbing accessories, and waterworks found buried in global metro areas built after alleged Tartaria's fall. Recurring motifs and design elements across ancient structures, separated by vast distances, implying a common source. Period engravings, illustrations, and old maps portraying prominent geographies incorrectly, as if drawn from a lost cartographic tradition. Strange anachronistic artifacts turning up in strata assigned to eras before their theoretical invention. Ancient Tartarian artifacts. Timeline of Tartaria and new chronology theories. Circa 1200s AD, European texts begin referencing a mysterious region called Great Tartary, encompassing the Central Asian steppe. The name continues in occasional usage, referring to shifting Mongol and Turkic confederations occupying the Eurasian interior over the next centuries. Circa 1500s AD, European occult and proto archaeological writings start speculating about advanced prehistoric civilizations, Atlantis, lost knowledge, and forgotten cultures preceding ancient Egypt, Greece, and Rome. Circa 1600s to 1700s AD, numerous ornate buildings in Europe, Asia, and the Americas are constructed incorporating Romanesque designs, predating the era of European colonialism and cultural diffusion. Early 1700s AD, philosophers like Isaac Newton and Jean-Sylvain Bally used astronomical observations to propose revisions to ancient chronology and the accepted timeline. Late 1700s AD, alternate history hypotheses emerged proposing the fabrication or misdating of major portions of ancient and medieval history in Europe and the Near East. 1800s AD, the idea spreads of a global flood or series of cataclysms, wiping out evidence of precocious antediluvian civilizations with advanced architecture and technology. 1800s AD, occult and spiritualist works increasingly tie notions of advanced prehistory with root races, Atlantis, lost continents, and human degeneration from a higher state. 1907 to 1932, AD, Russian polymath. Nikolai Morozov publishes works challenging traditional history and chronology using statistics and astronomical analysis. 1970s to 80s, AD, Russian mathematician Anatoly Fomenko radically condenses conventional history into a shorter new chronology based on computational argument. 1980s onward, Slavic nationalists and Hindutva writers promote narratives of Vedic, Slavic, or Aryan proto-civilizations as the source of human advancement. 2000s AD online, speculation arises fusing 19th century mud flood concepts with Morozov and Fomenko's timeline theories and occult prehistory notions into a Tartaria narrative. Present day, Tartaria theory extends Fomenko's argument using anomalous artifacts and architecture to hypothesize a globally dominant Romanesque civilization destroyed circa 1600s AD and erased from history. Dates of key cultures and events in conventional history become disputed. Architectural anomalies. Brick and stone edifices featuring Romanesque designs incongruously appear on every inhabited continent, seemingly predating the age of European colonialism. Tartaria adherents cite this as evidence of a forgotten global civilization, displaying cultural and technological continuity. They argue mistaken dating and false historical extensions disguise these vestiges of a lost unified culture. European cities abound with medieval churches, administrative buildings, and infrastructure dated to recent centuries but sporting ornate stonework recalling classical Rome. From buried medieval foundations and aqueducts beneath Renaissance Florence to still standing government buildings in Washington, D.C., and Latin American capitals emulating Roman architecture, the shared styles suggest to advocate not independent adoption, but cultural continuation from a common precursor empire. Tartarians point to anomalies like the brutalist 15th century fortress Ollantaytambo in Peru's Incan heartland as an inheritance from predecessors, or to the church at Lalibela in Ethiopia, carved in the 12th century's Romanesque style, centuries before Jesuit missions, as evidence Christianity and its architectural forms originated in their lost civilization before reportedly being spread by colonists. Mainstream histories attribute such diffusion to trade and missionary routes. But for Tartaria adherents, the timeline discrepancy reveals purposeful obfuscation. The 600-year-old carved granite box chambers inside the Great Pyramid of Giza evidence advanced stoneworking abilities seemingly incongruous with bronze and tools. Megalithic structures like the Indonesian Buddhist temple of Borobudur and Armenian Zvartnots Cathedral exhibit architectural sophistication predating historically attested construction dates. Hidden history, reports of buried buildings, and even entire towns discovered underneath layers of earth are cited as further indications of historic deception, whether beneath centuries of accumulated urban soil and construction, as in archaeological sites like Florence, or mysteriously submerged in remote outposts like the Alaskan ghost town Port Chatham. Such finds are linked by advocates to forgotten cultures and deliberately buried history. Similarly, Tartarians interpret renovated sites cloaking older structures like Istanbul's Hagia Sophia, rebuilt in the 1500s atop earlier Byzantine and Roman churches, as symbolic of a concealed antediluvian past buried under duplicitous overlay. Establishment histories describe additions, renovations, and decay over time, but conspiracists see calculated deception. The sheer scale and remoteness of sites argue for an influential hidden hand. The ancient metropolis of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey was purposefully buried around 8000 BCE, suggesting important sites have been concealed for unknown reasons. Subsurface LiDAR scanning has revealed thousands of ancient Mayan structures hidden for centuries under thick jungle in Guatemala. Entire medieval frescoed chapels were discovered walled off intact inside Lateran Palace, evidencing architectural repurposing and embedding across eras. Impossible artifacts, literally out of place artifacts, lend credence to theoretical suppressed timelines. Carved skulls and figurines, like the impossibly intricate 12,000-year-old Shigar idol, or stone tools at 300,000-year-old sites, far precede the accepted onset of civilization. Mechanical wonders like the 2,000-year-old Antikythera mechanism or miniaturized metal Vaimanika Shastra engines, allegedly made by 6th century India, reflect science fiction more than do its history. Mainstream scholars debunk most such objects as hoaxes or misinterpretation, accusing mythmakers of projecting modern technology onto primitive artifacts. But Tartarians suggest fragments of a forgotten high science survives, its anomalies highlighting flaws in conventional timelines. Whether or not the artifacts themselves prove authentic, their incongruity with orthodox prehistory keeps the door open for speculation. The 500,000-year-old Latoli footprints in Tanzania provide contentious evidence of bipedal hominin walking upright long before expected. The robotic features and advanced engineering in the small Vaimanika Shastra models seem aerodynamically sound, but outplaced historically. Certain maps, like the Piri Reis depictions of Antarctica's coastline, raise questions due to their apparent accuracy, long predating modern cartography. The common thread uniting these disparate mysteries is contradiction of established chronology. Confronted with this dissonance, advocates do not re-evaluate their own evidence, but insist the contradictions prove fabrication. Conventional historians face accusations of perpetuating willful deception by elites threatened by revelations of hidden truth. Here, the parallels emerge between Tartaria and Fomenko's statistical framework for radically condensing known history based on computational arguments about duplicated rulers and replicated epochs. Both critique rigid establishment timelines by highlighting incongruities and gaps not easily reconciled with standard models. While Fomenko relies more on mathematics and astronomy, Tartarians emphasize architectural, artistic, and technological anomalies. Each interprets the lack of clean consensus around dating as proof of concealed time rather than imperfect knowledge, with conventional history dismissed as myth. Fomenko's new chronology condenses conventional, ancient, and medieval history into a much shorter time frame based on computational analyses of duplicated rulers and events. Critics highlight Fomenko's flawed statistical methodology and selective use of astronomical data to collapse chronology. Fomenko interprets perceived inconsistencies in dating as deliberate falsification of history rather than imperfect knowledge. Mythology or pseudoscience. Critics justly highlight logical flaws and evidentiary leaps underlying Tartaria claims of a global Romanesque civilization now forgotten. Archaeological diffusion and renovations need not signify concealment, nor do speculative artifacts outweigh extensive documented history. The theory relies heavily on confirmation bias, emphasizing details that affirm its narrative while dismissing contradicting evidence as fabricated. Attempts to force incongruous pieces into a puzzling whole reflect creativity but not sound methodology. While advocates present Tartaria as an uncovered truth, it functionally serves more as mythology. By projecting idealized attributes onto a hypothetical precursor, civilization linked ancestry to one's own heritage, revisionist histories become psychologically appealing vehicles for constructing nationalist identity narratives. Yet, even as likely pseudo-history, the imaginative vigor and romantic allure of lost civilizations reflects public yearning for counter narratives to the established timeline. Tartaria proponents rightly sense gaps and limitations in conventional models, needing reconciliation with anomalous evidence. Their creative impulse provides cathartic release from constraints of rigid historiography, even if specific conclusions prove fanciful, with care not to let speculation totally unmoor facts. The larger project of re enchanting the past opens doors to richer insights. The chronology question. Standards of evidence aside, the notion of previous advanced civilizations is historically plausible. Scientific forensics supporting human emergence hundreds of thousands of years ago allow ample time for cultures and capabilities exceeding what sparse records document. Radical timeline critiques, like Fomenko's, while academically fringe, highlight the hypothetical flexibility of chronology before reliable written records and vulnerabilities of later eras to gaps or overlaps. Tartaria speculation resonates partly because cracks readily appear in the edifice of familiar history when scrutinized. For example, ambiguous traces of the Great Tartary designation predating modern Central Asian states accords, with mainstream scholarship acknowledging the Eurasian steppe hosted complex Bronze Age Khanates interacting with China, Persia, and Eastern Europe, flowing into Scythian and Xiongnu confederations that may have influenced later Turkic and Mongol empires before the name faded from use. There is space to hypothesize on the interactions and reach of these cultures while questioning later assumptions of relative isolation or primitivism. Even where specific conclusions prove untenable, the larger project of re examining chronology through multidisciplinary perspectives can strengthen the historical record. Outlier evidence sets an important bar for evaluating establishment narratives. Like and subscribe, and thanks for watching. And I hope I stirred up your curiosity about ancient civilizations.